The Halloween franchise is one of those pillars within my childhood that I view with great esteem. I loved these movies as a kid, and I watched them numerous times while growing up. While it's not my favorite horror franchise, it's definitely in the top three. So what I'd like to try and do, should time permit, is review the entire series leading up to Halloween this year. And with that, we'll be starting with Halloween 1, the original. This movie is a classic, and I'm going to assume that if you're watching this, you've already seen the movie. If you haven't, I recommend you pause the video, open up a new browser tab, and go watch Halloween. The only place I could find it was on Shudder. To begin with, I really want you to forget everything you know about this series. Pretend there weren't 50 movies that came after this one, and that this by itself is just a standalone film. By removing everything we know and just focusing on the first movie, there are some interesting things that stand out. So it becomes evident throughout this movie that Michael is meant to be the embodiment of evil. He is evil personified.
Don't underestimate it,
Don't you think we could refer to it as him?
if you say so.
I think Michael is actually possessed by something. Something took over his body back on Halloween night, 1963, and it later took over his mind. Michael is an example of what is known as perfect possession. Something evil, whether we call it a demon or the devil or some kind of pagan voodoo god, it doesn't really matter. The point is, the person that was Michael Myers at age 5 ceased to exist by age 7, and the thing inhabiting the body of Michael Myers is and never was human. Take a look at this scene where Michael is killing his sister right at the beginning of the movie. While he's stabbing his sister, he looks over at his hand. Almost as if he's confused about what's going on and what he's doing. And then he walks outside and his parents take his mask off. He looks pretty confused as to what he just did, as to what's going on. Dr. Loomis mentions in the movie numerous times that Michael isn't human. We're pretty much beaten over the head with it.
Man wouldn't do that. This isn't a man.
And then at the end of the movie, Michael is stabbed a couple of times with a knife. He's shot numerous times, he falls out of a second-story window, and he still gets up and walks away from all this. I know it's cliche at this point for killers to take all manner of abuse and still get up and walk around, but keep in mind that Halloween established a lot of those cliches, including this one. So John Carpenter wasn't pulling from some horror movie trope and capitalizing on it. He meant for Michael to be unkillable, inhuman. That was a part of the story he was telling. This is important not only here, but for the entire series. It's also what sets apart this movie from the Rob Zombie remake. In that remake, Michael isn't possessed by anything. He's just some dude. Another interesting detail about this movie, so if you go back to 1978 when this movie was made, there were no plans for a sequel initially. This was a standalone movie that nobody was really thinking franchise at the time. Also, at no point in this movie is it ever mentioned that Laurie is Michael's sister. There's not even a hint of this being the case. There isn't even a baby shown anywhere at the beginning of the movie. We see Judith, Michael's sister, and his mother and father, but there's never any baby shown anywhere. And stop and ask yourself for a moment, how the hell would Michael know what his baby sister looked like anyway now that she's grown up? He wouldn't. Also, what are the chances that his long-lost sister from 15 years prior just happens to be adopted by the family that bought his house, and she just happens to show up on the day that he escaped so he can see her? It doesn't make any sense. No. There's a much simpler explanation. Michael doesn't know Laurie at all when this movie was made. They decided to do that later, but in this movie, when it was originally released, Laurie was just some girl who stumbled across the path of pure evil. Michael had no motive. He saw Laurie and just decided to stalk her, to kill all of her friends, and then to try and kill her. Just because. The audiences who went and saw this when it first came out, they had no indication at all that she was his sister. That's the impression they would have been left with when they left the theaters. That this was just some psychopath that stumbled across this girl and turned her life into a living hell.
What's the boogeyman?
This is what I love about this movie so much. That's a very unsettling feeling, that you could just be walking down the street and some random person could see you and decide to start following you. That's something that can stick with you for days after watching a movie. It's probably one of the reasons this movie was so popular when it came out. Now, the way they present Michael in this movie is excellent. It's something I wish more movies did. Michael is sort of this stalking, creepy presence in the background. The Shape is how they refer to him. Wherever Laurie goes, there he is, watching, waiting, learning. And they use this deep, heavy breathing throughout the movie to let you know that he's near. There's this moment Laurie has run across the street to get away from Michael. She just barely manages to get into the house before he reaches her. She talks to Tommy for a moment, and when she looks up, she realizes the window is open, and that he's probably in the house.
Please stop. Please.
And then you can hear him breathing. She can hear him breathing, and it's very uncomfortable. That pit in your stomach starts to grow. It's excellent writing and directing, working in concert with one another to get the audience engaged with the movie. Most of the characters in this movie, though, are pretty shallow. I'm going to be honest here. Linda is one of the most annoying characters from any movie I've ever seen. Instead of giving her any sort of depth, they give her a lame, totally annoying gimmick.
Totally.
She's the now stereotypical dumb, ditzy blonde who just won't stop talking.
Who cares? I always forget my chemistry book and my math book and my English book and my French book and, well, who needs books anyway? I don't need books. I always forget all of my books. I mean, it doesn't really matter if you have your books or not.
This isn't to take away from the actress. She did a great job with what she was given, and PJ Soles has gone on to have a pretty cool career since then. It's just this particular character, well, let's just say I wasn't sad when Michael did her in. Annie is okay, if not a little bland. They managed to make her a little charming at points.
I give you all. No keys, but please.
But overall, there isn't much going on there. Her only care or motivation seems to be getting out to see her boyfriend, Paul. Like I said, it's pretty shallow. But at least she's not annoying and has some genuinely funny moments.
You locked yourself in.
I know. Pull my foot. I'm stuck.
She also has a little more depth than Linda, as she does try and help Laurie out with her boy troubles. Otherwise, she's kind of forgettable. Tommy is a very engaging character who seems obsessed with the boogeyman. This isn't shallow. This is some character depth and something the audience can easily relate to.
Tarantula Man?
Laurie, what's the boogeyman?
His concern over whether or not the boogeyman exists and what he's capable of is something that most kids go through in some form or another, and he learns the hard way that despite Laurie's objections, the boogeyman is in fact real.
The jack-o'-lantern.
What about the boogeyman?
There's no such thing.
Richie said he was coming after me tonight.
He's just a cool character on top of that. Lindsay had one funny moment. Other than that, she's pretty forgettable as well. And then finally we come to Laurie. Now Laurie Strode is a lovable character and set the benchmark on the friendly virgin final girl trope that's been in almost every horror movie since then. She's funny and pretty assertive throughout the movie. Of course, Jamie Lee Curtis does an excellent job throughout the movie. There's no doubt about that. However, I don't think Laurie is nearly as smart as the movie tries to give her credit for. I mean, she's a little quick on her feet when it comes to dealing with Michael when the tension is ramped up, but overall, she does a lot of really, really dumb things. They try and get us to believe that she's intelligent at the start of the movie when she herself says,
from babysitting so much.
Guys think I'm too smart.
but she does so many things that just left me scratching my head. For instance, throughout a good portion of the beginning of the movie, Michael is following her from one place to the next, and he's not shy at all about making his presence known. She clearly sees him numerous times throughout the day. Then she sees him again when she gets home standing in her yard looking up at her. Why aren't you calling the police at this point? Some strange guy wearing a mask has been clearly staring at you for about 8 hours and following you all over town. What are you doing? Where is the phone? And she knows the sheriff. Annie is the sheriff's daughter. So it's not like this would have just be laughed off or filed away. One phone call to Annie or the sheriff directly, and this problem is solved before any people get killed. Then, not once but twice, she manages to seriously wound Michael. She's got his knife in her hands twice, and he is on the ground, not moving. Why are you not going at this guy with everything you have? At one point, she sends the kids running out of the house screaming, and instead of going with them, she just sits there until Michael gets up and attacks her again. Look, I get this is a movie, and if characters did smart things, there wouldn't be a movie, but let's not pretend Laurie Strode is an intelligent woman. She's capable, she's pretty strong, I guess, in that she's able to keep moving and keep fighting. She cracks a couple of funny jokes throughout the movie, but I don't think she's much smarter than Lindsay. She only survived as long as she did because not once but twice Michael just straight up missed her with a knife. Michael is the reason Michael lost this battle, not because of anything Laurie necessarily did. Sam Loomis is a character that seems to be loved by all, and I absolutely go with the theory that Sam Loomis in Halloween is the same Sam character as Sam Loomis from Psycho, because that's just fun. And while I enjoy his performance throughout the film, mostly, it always felt like the character was being a little overdramatic. As I got older and I realized the things that I mentioned at the beginning of this review, that Michael is really some supernatural evil being and that Sam wasn't exaggerating, I began to enjoy this character even more.
Old child with this blank, pale, emotionless face and the blackest eyes.
He sounds crazy, he sounds like he's being dramatic, which is why the sheriff doesn't seem to buy into everything he's saying right away. But he wasn't being dramatic. He isn't crazy. Michael really is everything Sam Loomis says he is. This character adds a lot to the plot as he tries to chase Michael down. The performance was awesome and the character is awesome. I don't have a whole lot of complaints.
Hey, Lonnie, get your ass away from there.
The score and cinematography in this movie are just top-notch. In fact, the Halloween theme song is one of my favorites from any horror movie I've seen. Often, it's my ringtone on my phone. I dig it that much. So overall, I'm going to give this movie a 9 out of 10. I think the story itself is awesome. The idea of some masked psychopath randomly coming across some random girl and stalking and killing all of her and her friends before going after her is just a really cool horror movie. From a horror movie perspective, the kills were pretty cool too, even if they weren't all believable. Compared to other horror movies, the acting and score were really good too. The only reason I don't give this movie a 10 out of 10 is because some of the characters were pretty shallow, and because Linda said totally at least 5 too many times.
Totally.
And that's going to wrap up our review of Halloween. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe if you enjoyed this content, and leave a comment down below. Let me know what you thought of the movie and of this review. Thanks.
How?
Killed him.
You can't kill the boogeyman.